It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back from Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to outbrew your favorite Magic channel. As always, deck list is down in the description. If that's what you care about, take it, use it as you wish. I'd love to see what you do with it. But, friends, I feel like it's been a couple sets since we've gotten a red-white equipment commander, so why not cover the next one? We have Kellan the Fae-Blooded. Supposedly, Kellan is going to be a character going forward in the story, so I'm intrigued to see what that means. But we not only have a new legendary equipment slash enchanted commander, but we also have one that has an adventure on it, which is kind of cool. We can actually play the adventure from the command zone, search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle. So we effectively have an open the armory type effect, which is pretty cool. And then when Kellan comes out, it has double strike, which is great. And it says other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellan the Fae-Blooded. Okay. So there's a lot of ways that we can approach equipment decks. But what I tried to do with this deck was, let's still focus on putting all our equipment on Kellan. But the cool part here is, if we can put other tokens onto the battlefield, we could take advantage of this +1/+0 for each thing attached to him and maybe get a wide board of other tokens or creatures that we can still then attack with and deal more damage with. It's not just going to be Kellan threatening people with commander damage. Then it's going to be a board of tokens threatening our opponents as well. Mana base, try to keep it pretty basic. A lot of trying out the new the Restless Land. Playing the Sundown and the Spectator Scene to give us some untapped dual options. Battle Forge as well. We're playing Alpine Shadow and Sacred Peaks because we're playing the Clifftop Retreat, so we just want to give more ways to have things down. Rustfelt Bridge for an artifact for the couple of things in our deck that care about artifacts. But again, just, Rogue's Passage to give Kellan unblockable, pretty basic red-white mana base with just a little bit of fun as well. For the enchantments, we're not playing a ton. I know Kellan says aura or enchantment, and I realized, or aura or equipment, and I realized when I finished the list that I probably should have put all that glitters and ethereal armor into the list, since they both do effectively what we want to do anyway in making Kellan bigger or making something else bigger and giving good abilities. But I did not. So right away, I'd recommend adding maybe ethereal armor or all that glitters if you're interested, because both of them, if I recall correctly, both of them should give us a buff. I know ethereal armor will. I'm pretty sure all that glitters is enchantments and artifacts. If not, it's just enchantments, and then maybe it's just ethereal armor that just could come in. But either way, maybe we look at both coming in. Court of Embereth, going to make us some tokens each turn. But for the Monarch, it's dealing damage to each opponent equal to the number of creatures we have. It's an interesting ability. Maybe this is the card that comes out for ethereal armor. I just think it's worth trying. I like cards like this where it has a value of return, because those are things we can count on. I mean, we can turn it into something good. Fighter class comes in, gets us an equipment right away. We can pay 3 into it to make each equipment cost 2 less, and then up to level 3 where it says whenever a creature control attacks, up to 1 target creature blocks this combat if able, forcing our opponents to block with something if we want. Forge Anew from Lord of the Rings, one of the new equipment cards from that. Whenever it enters the battlefield, return target equipment from our graveyard to the battlefield. As long as it's your turn, we can activate equip abilities at any time. You could cast an instant, and we can pay 0 rather than equip cost of the first equip ability you activate during each of your turns. Forge Anew is darn good, mainly for that middle ability. What that means is, tactically, if we were to attack and a creature got through unblocked, we could equip everything that we have over to that creature and potentially hit someone for a ton of damage. Or swing our commander in maybe with 1 or 2 on it, see if it gets blocked, and if it doesn't, ambush onto it, get a bunch more onto it. I like Forge Anew. I think it's an interesting card, and it's kind of exactly what I think this archetype needed. Rising of the Day to give everything haste, and all of our legendaries get +1/+0. And then Sigarda's Aid. We can cast aura and equipment as though they had flash, and when an equipment enters the battlefield, we can attach it to our creature. So effectively, we can bring equipment in at instant speed to get on our creatures as well, which is pretty darn good. Well, we're playing equipment, so let's get into the bulk of what our deck is going to be, which is artifacts. We will talk about the mana artifacts first, and then we'll go through the equipment. Arcane Signet, of course, Boros Signet being pretty much, bog standard in most decks. Of course, Arcane Signet being bog standard in any 2-color deck or more. Boros Signet being one of our multiple red-white artifacts that can tap for mana. We're playing the Commander Sphere just because, again, it's another thing that taps for mana, and it can draw us a card if need be. Soul Ring, because that 2 colorless mana can go a long way, especially considering all of our equipment, minus a couple most of our equipment are colorless. So, Soul Ring is going to go a far way into putting them down. Talisman, our other red-white mana rock that is pretty darn playable and going to be helpful. And then a new card that kind of plays a double role in the Iron Crag. It's a 2-mana legendary artifact that taps for colorless mana, but it says whenever a legendary creature enters battlefield under your control, you may have it, the Iron Crag, become an equipment artifact named Everflame Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains equip 3, and equipped creature gets +3/+3 and loses all of their abilities. So when a legendary creature comes in, we can turn it into an equipment that then buffs a creature. I like this because in the early game, we can use it as a mana rock, but then eventually we can flip it kind of into an equipment and use it for that. Well, let's go through all our equipment choices. Again, there's a ton of equipment. I just picked the things I thought were the most fun. I did also put in a couple high-dollar equipment because I think at the end of the day, we want to hit hard, and I think they will help. First up, Anduril, Flame of the West. Creature gets +3/+1, and it says whenever it attacks, we create 2 tapped 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. If that creature is legendary, instead create 2 of those tokens that are tapped and attacking. So on Kellan, this will buff all of our tokens +1/+0 for being attached, and those 1/1s that come in are going to get Kellan's ability to buff them up before they deal damage. So this could potentially lead to 2 unblocked creatures in the air that could potentially be pretty big. Bladehold War Whip comes in with a 2/2 Rebel creature token attached that this is attached to. It says equip abilities you activate other equipment cost 1 less to activate. That's great. The cheaper we can get the equip abilities, preferably 0, the better. And then the equipped creature has double strike. What I like about the War Whip is it gives us a token. I think this is the good part about the Fae-Blooded equipment, is because they're going to give us a token when they come in, and the token will stick around even when we move it. The problem with the living weapon equipment is as soon as we move it off that creature dies. So I like these Fae-Blooded ones. Sometimes they cost a teeny bit more, but they're great, and don't get me wrong, we have other ways to cheat them on, so we don't mind it. Captain's Claws, creature gets +1/+0, and whenever it attacks, we put a 1/1 white core ally creature token on the battlefield tapped and attacking. Again, it comes in, hopefully it's going to get that buff from Kellan, and it's going to hit hard. Colossus Hammer, the classic modern equipment at this point, +10/+10 and loses flying, equip 8. Again, we have ways to cheat this on. It's a big hammer. It's going to help Kellan hit hard. Crown of Gondor, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each creature we control. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under control, if there's no monarch, we become the monarch. It's equipped 4, but it's 3 less to activate it for the monarch. So hopefully for the monarch, this only costs 1, and this could potentially help Kellan hit even harder, or put this on another creature and have 2 or 3 creatures that are going to hit our opponents hard. Dowling Dagger is an interesting equipment because when it comes in, we give a target opponent 2/0/2 plant creatures with Defender. The creature we equip this to gets +2/+1, but as soon as it deals combat damage to a player, we flip it over and it turns into a land that can tap for 3 mana of any color. Dowling Dagger is great here because we get that mana and we can use it for other things, hopefully. Ember Cleave, one of my favorite equipment I've ever had the privilege of using in Standard. Costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature you control. When it comes in, we can attach it right away, and that creature gets double strike and trample. This could be perfect on Kellan to potentially knock someone out or hit someone really hard. If we attack with a bunch of creatures, it potentially gets down to just red, drop it in, get it on Kellan, buff the rest of our creatures, and give him double strike and trample. Forebear's Blade, +3/+0 vigilance and trample. And again, as you can see, we're trying to give Kellan some trample so that he can hit hard. Whenever the creature dies, we can attach it to something else, and that's darn good. So that way we could put it on a token, and if it dies, attach it to something else. But I like Forebear's Blade. I think we want these trample things where we can get it. It says, when hammering is on or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach that equipment to target creature you control. Equip creature gets +2/+0 and indestructible. This is another way for us to work around having to actually equip something and get it onto Kellan for cheap. So if something comes in, it gets attached to Kellan for cheap, and then we're not only just getting things onto Kellan, but again, with his ability, we're bumping up our whole board. Hexplate Wall Breaker, +2/+2. And it says, whenever the creature attacks, if it's the first combat of his turn, untap each attacking creature. After this phase, there is initial combat phase. We have to be careful with abilities like this, because if we make a token tapped and attacking, it normally doesn't have haste, which means with his hexblade equipment, it's not going to be able to attack. But the cool part is we'll have another ability to use that again, you know, and hopefully make more tokens attacking our opponents. Horn of Valhalla makes us tokens on the adventure side, but then on the other side, +1/+1 for each creature we control. I like this because we can dump in a bunch of tokens, equip it to Kellan, and now all those tokens we have or that we created to get that +1/+0. Inquisitorial Rosette, whenever equipped creature attacks, make it 2/2 Astartes token with vigilance that's attacking. And then attacking creatures gain menace till turn. I love this because we make a token and gives everything menace. So again, we're trying to pick equipment that not only just benefit Kellan, but benefit our whole board as well. Kemba's Banner, +1/+1 for each creature control, and again, comes in with one of those rebel tokens. Lexington Warhammer, +3/+0 trample and lifelink. Again, another great one for Kellan. It's going to deal a bunch of damage and gain us some life back, of course, with the trample dealing damage and the lifelink. Masterwork of Ingenuity can come in as a copy of any equipment on the battlefield. That's pretty cool because not a lot of our equipment are legendary, so this is going to come in and pick something good. Get a second copy of it. Maul the Skyclaves. When it comes in, we attach it to a creature. That creature gets +2/+2 flying and first strike. This could help Kellan get through for a ton of damage, or another creature. Mithril Code. Whenever it comes in, attach to target legendary creature we control, and that creature is indestructible. Again, that's great. We could flash it in. Nettle Cyst, another example. This is an example of a living weapon equipment. So this one makes a 0/0 germ and attaches it to it. So again, unlike the Formiridan, that germ won't survive if we take Nettle Cyst off. Quick creatures +1/+1 for each artifact or enchantment you control. So here you go. Here's another great thing to put on either Kellan or something else. And again, just buff them up even higher. Sculpting Steel can come in as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield, either ours or maybe our opponent's mana rocks if need be. Shadow Spear, +1/+1. Trample and lifelink. Again, another great thing for Kellan to trample through or potentially gain us some life. Sting the Glinting Dagger, +1/+1 in haste, and it says at the beginning of each combat we untap the equipped creature. And that's pretty great, because then Kellan could block if need be and not just attack. Sunforger has a pretty classic ability. For 2 mana, we can untouch it. Search our library for a red or white instant card with CM mana value 4 or less and cast that card without paying its mana cost. We have a lot of protection spells. We have a lot of removal. Sunforger is great because for 2 mana, we can go get a protection spell when we need it, removal when we need it, use it, and use it in that moment. Swiftfoot Boots, Hexproof and Haste. Hexproof stopping our opponents from targeting that thing, but still letting us target it. It's the reason I'm not playing the Greaves, is because I still want to be able to attach the things to my creature, but protect it from my opponents. Sword of Feast and Famine. Here's one of the pricier equipments we're playing. Protection from black and from green. Whenever deals combination of a player, that player discards a card and we untap all lands we control. Black and green is going to affect more players than you think it will. Maybe it means we can get Kellan in for cheap or potentially for free into somebody. Sword of the Animist, whenever that creature attacks, we can search our library for a basic land. Put it on the battlefield tab. We don't have a ton of ramp outside of card draw. Access to us in red and white, so this is going to help us a ton. Another thing we have is the Reaver Cleaver. +1/+1 in trample I think is already good enough. That's going to help us enough. But then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we make that many treasure tokens, giving us more mana to use to play more equipment, attach more things. Thran Power Suit, the creature gets +1/+1 for each or an equipment attached to it and has ward 2. So this is kind of a mini Nettle Cyst or that just for it, and then gets ward 2 as well, which is pretty cool. And then Trailblazer's Boot has non-basic land walk, so cannot be blocked as long as defending player controls a non-basic land, and that is going to be most players in Commander. So Trailblazer's Boots will effectively make Kellan unblockable, and hopefully that'll help us hit people for a lot of really good damage. All right, getting into the spells. Boros Charm, Flawless Maneuver, Unbreakable Formation for protection. Chaos Warp, Dispatch, Generous Gift, and Wear and Tear for removal. Chaos Warp is a pretty popular red removal spell. Owner of target permanent shuffles into their library. They reveal the top card. If it's permanent, they put it on the battlefield. Dispatch taps down a creature, but if we control 3 more artifacts in exile, this effectively becomes a Sword of Plowshares, basically, which is great. That's what we want. Generous Gift can hit absolutely anything, and their controller gets a 3/3 Elephant for the privilege, and then Wear and Tear, we can cast either side or both together to destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or destroy both. On the spell side, Faithless Looting for some draw, Open the Armory, and Steel Shaper's Gift to get us whatever equipment we need, Song of Totentans to make some tokens to go alongside Kellan to get buffed up, and then Wrath of God if we need to wipe the board. All that's left is creatures, and we're not playing a ton of them because we're so reliant on the equipment. But again, like most red-white equipment decks, the creature base just ends up becoming either other very popular equipment commanders or creatures that are just going to be generally good. Adeline, great creature. The wider we go, the bigger it gets, and every time we attack, it makes a token attacking each opponent. Again, with Kellan's ability, hopefully they're going to come down as 4/1s, 5/1s, 6/1s instead of 1/1s. Akiri, whenever we attack a player with one of our equipped creatures, we draw a card. And for a white, we can unattach an equipment from a creature we control. If we do, tap it and it becomes indestructible. This could protect our commander from a board wipe. Or if someone goes in deep to try to block our commander or our equipped creature, we can protect that way. Arden, one of the best cards for equipment decks, because at the beginning of combat, we can attach any number of equipment you control to target permanent or player. So if someone takes out Kellan on our way into combat, well, cool. Arden's ability, put them on something else, hit somebody with it. Armored Sky Hunter, whenever it attacks, we look at the top 6. We can put an aura equipment from among them onto the battlefield. And if it's an equipment, we attach it and put the rest on the bottom. This is a great attacker because it's going to get the buff from Kellan, but again, it's going to help put more equipment on the battlefield. Brunner Battlehammer says each creature you control gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it. This is going to help pump up Kellan if we're attaching to it, and we can pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip we do each turn. So here's another one of these examples of 0 for the first one each turn. Just gives us more reliability to hopefully see these reduction type effects. Danitha, reducing the cost of equipments, and also just a great body. First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, or First Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink. A great body to equip to, even if we lose Kellan or we need something else. Halvar, all creatures that we control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike. And at the beginning of each combat, we can move our equipment around if we want to. Again, another great ability to have. Now, Halvar is actually a equipment on the backside if we don't want that double strike, +2/+0 in vigilance, and whenever the equipped creature dies, we can return it to the hand, which isn't a bad ability as well. But I think more often than not, we want that front side, we want that double strike. Krenko, whenever it attacks, put a counter on it and make more tokens. Again, we want to go wide, we want to have those tokens for Kellan's ability to give us the benefit. Lizard Blades is a 1/1 double strike, but it is an equipment, and we can attach it to something to give that thing double strike. Monastery Mentor is just going to hopefully give us a bunch of monks with prowess. Then those monks are going to get buffed up by Kellan. I like Monastery Mentor because it's just going to give us the tokens for what we're already doing anyway. I wish we had more of these type of effects where, you know, whenever we cast something, we make a token. There's not as many of them as you think there are, especially not for artifacts. I'm sure there are, and I'm sure I'm missing some, but I think Monastery Mentor is going to do the best because it can get big too. And again, all of those monks are going to get buffed up by Kellan. Pure Steel Paladin, whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under our control, we can draw a card, which is a great ability. And then as long as we have 3 more artifacts, all of our equip costs are 0. And this is one of the best abilities in our deck. Make everything free to equip. Get things down, get them equipped, and start dealing damage. Rayav Mastersmith, whenever a creature you control that's enchanted or equipped attacks, that creature gets double strike until end turn. Again, another way to just make our equipped creatures hit harder. And then SRAM, whenever we cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle, draw a card. Again, the equipment decks, we're trying to gain benefit from playing the equipment and make the equipment cheaper to equip. Do I think Kellan's the best equipment out there? I don't know. I mean, I think it's certainly cool. I think it mixes the fun of equipment with going wide for tokens. You kind of stop the pitfalls of most Voltron decks because you're going to still have other tokens sitting around to kind of help protect you or be threats as well, which is the one thing I like. I love that Kellan comes with a open the armory attached to it. I think that makes it really good. And if I was going to pick an equipment deck, this might be something I might mess around with over other equipment commanders because, again, I like the open the armory attached to it, and I think it has a great ability that lets us plan for something out other than Voltron kill somebody with it. It can also be Voltron kill somebody with it, but it's also, hey, here's a bunch of tokens I have as well. But let me know what you think of Kellan down in the comments. Deck list in the description. I'd love to hear what you think. Are you looking at Kellan? I'd love to hear what cards you are putting in your deck, but I will catch you guys next time.